Kelly Katcher, welcome to the Lean Out podcast. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Dawn. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. I'm excited to talk to you today. So, first off, tell everyone who's listening a little bit about you, introduce yourself, and talk about how your work life balance is different from other people in your profession.
Well, I'm an anesthesiologist, and my career had been everything up until pretty recently. And I decided to take charge of my happiness, and I quit my full time job. I was a full time partner, and I've started doing locums. And the main reason why I chose to do that is because I'm married, and my husband is French and lives in France. So we've had a 10-year, almost 11-year now relationship, long distance, very long distance in separate continents. And we managed to handle that fine with me working full time, with him working a full time job. But I realized that my career wasn't making me happy. And I needed to be in charge of making me happy. So I'm still an anesthesiologist, but now I'm doing it on my terms.
And about how much are you working now? Because you're doing it only in the States, correct?
Correct. Correct. I can't work in France. I'd be a foreign medical grad, and I am too old to go back to residency and language exams and all of that sort of thing. So I come back to the States, and I usually will work 2 to 3 weeks at a time, and then I'll be off for 2 to 3 weeks at a time. I decided to take all of August off, so I'm not working at all in August.
That's the beauty of locums is that you can set your own schedule. So that's wonderful. And you're recording this right now in France. And what part of France do you guys live in?
We're in Paris. We're in the 18th arrondissement, which is the same as Montmartre, Sacré-Cœur, that area of town. So that's the area I'm in right now.
And have you learned French or what are you doing as far as the language goes?
I started learning French when I knew our relationship was pretty solid because he has two children from a previous marriage. His youngest didn't speak any English, and his mother speaks no English. So I decided if I wanted to be a part of this family that I needed to learn French. So I started on that about 8 years ago. I'm still learning, but I can carry on conversation fairly decently. The French people look at me like I have three heads when I start speaking because they hear my American accent.
Yeah. So this is a very long distance relationship and it's also been a really long time frame. I didn't realize that you guys have been together so long. What's your tip for success for being away from each other like that?
Communication. Communication is key. Um, if you don't talk to each other, you start assuming things, then your insecurities will get the best of you. Trust issues will start popping in there. So communication is key. And that's not to say that you have to know where each other is at every moment of the day, but you do have to communicate and communicate that interest in what each other's day looks like, even though you're not there, and even though you're not together. Communicate feelings because you can't see facial expressions all the time. You can't hear a voice all the time. Um, and being in different time zones is a challenge too, because most of the time one is sleeping while the other one's working or awake. So that part's challenging, but communication is the key.
Yeah. So I want to get into how you made this transition and why you decided to transition out from your full-time partner role with leadership responsibilities to being a free agent. However, I do want to know first how you met your husband and what the situation was that, you ended up with this man who is from France.
Well, it's an interesting one. I've been married twice before. I had resisted dating sites, even though they were kind of the up and coming thing. And everybody was telling me, oh, you should go on Match.com, you should go on eHarmony, those things to meet somebody. And I wouldn't do it, wouldn't do it. But then, you get to an age where going to bars and clubs is not your scene anymore. So where do you meet people? At the grocery store? Probably not. Although I guess it happens sometimes. So I did eventually get on some of the dating websites, and I've had a lot of disastrous dates. And then I was on Tinder, which was designed to be a hookup site. And when somebody told me about Tinder, I was like, well, I'm not looking to hook up. I want to meet somebody. And they're like, oh, but I have a friend that met her fiance on Tinder. And so Tinder is different from some of the other sites in the fact that you don't put in a million things that you're looking for to sort out people. You have 500 characters to make a profile. And so I decided I would make my profile very sarcastic and to the point. And said I was not looking for a hookup, that I was interested in someone who traveled, i.e., with a passport. Traveling's always been a passion of mine. That if their wife, fiance, habitual bed partner would be upset with them messaging me to move on. And my now husband saw it, thought it was funny, and clicked my profile. And it turned out that we were a match. Because the night I clicked on his profile, because at the time, Tinder was local, so you only had a 90-mile radius. I would have never met somebody who lived in France. But he was in Houston at the time, and that's where I was living. And I had just flown back to Houston from Singapore, where I interviewed for a job. Um, so couldn't sleep because of the jet lag after being in Singapore for a week, and saw his profile, sent him a message. The next morning, he messaged me back and he said, hi, would have been nice to meet you, but I'm on my way to the airport. I said, oh, well, where are you flying to? He said, Paris. I said, oh, I love Paris. When do you get back to Houston? I don't know. Like, why? Do you not know when you come back? And he said, well, I'm going for work. And I said, but you don't know how long you have to work over there? He said, that's where I live. I came to Houston for work. And I said,
Yeah, the
oh, okay.
opposite.
Nice talking to you. Let me know if you ever come back to Houston. But stayed in touch. And 3 months later, we organized a meeting in person because he had another flight to Houston. And we met for the first time, and we've been together ever since.
That's awesome. Now, you mentioned that you had been married before, and I want to preface my next question with the fact that I know that you have this background of really being dedicated to medicine, wanting to be a physician when you were a young child, then getting derailed a bit with a bad relationship at an early age, having to work off debt and get a job before you even finished your college. And it's just amazing how dedicated you were to get to the point of realizing your dreams of becoming a successful physician. So, with that in mind, tell me about why you decided to forego all of the success metrics that you had worked so hard for to become a partner, to become a leader in the group, and then do this locum tenens.
I think the biggest thing for me, and probably most people going through medicine, you always hear all the people ahead of you saying, you're going to make partner. Oh, I'm partner. Partnership is 2-year track. Partnership. Oh, if they offer longer, that's not a good job. You want partnership. It's all you hear the whole time that you're going through medical school and residency. So it's like, each degree is an achievement. A job is an achievement, but it seemed like partnership was an achievement as well. And it was something that is ingrained in us to be driven to work towards. And with my jobs and with everything that went on, divorce, all of that, the 2 jobs that I had prior to my last job, the first job didn't offer partnership until there was a spot available for it. Like, they were a small community hospital, small anesthesia group, and they just had X number of partners. And they were fair about it. Like, whoever got hired before would be the next person to be partner once there was a spot. And they were upfront about it. So there was nothing, deceitful or anything like that, but that's the way it was. And so, yeah, I could have stayed there until it was my turn to become partner, but I decided to move and try something different. And the next job that I had been there maybe a year and a half, I guess, maybe a year and a half. And there were some issues. It's a little bit of a good old boys club. But then I had met my husband and we had talked about the possibility of us having a life together. What would that look like? Would I be able to live in France? He couldn't live in the United States because his kids were younger at the time and he had shared custody. So when I found out I couldn't work in France, I was like, okay, now what are we going to do? Because I'm not going to go through school again for all of that. And how are we going to see each other? So figuring out a work schedule that was not every week was ideal. And then locums had actually crossed my mind then. That was in 2015. So I went to my chief at the time and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing locums because I want to spend more time in France." And he's like, "No, no, no, you don't want to do locums. It's not steady work. It's not guaranteed. You don't want to do that. We can work out a schedule." So he actually did work out a schedule so that I could spend 2 weeks in France and work 2 weeks and keep all my benefits as a full-time employee.
Hmm.
I was working my tail end off because I was putting in 80 hours a week so that I was full-time. I did that for a year and a half, and then I was starting to get burned out. And so my husband and I talked. We weren't married at the time, but we talked and decided 3 weeks working, 1 week off was good enough, because I was dying. I couldn't do anything. I had zero life when I was in Houston, and it would take me 3 or 4 days to sleep to catch up with rest when I would come to France. So, he agreed, and we did that for probably another year and a half. And then I moved to Vegas and went to work there and became a partner. And, with all the things that come along and got into leadership roles, got into all this responsibility. And I felt like that's what I was supposed to do. Like, finally, it had taken me 15 years to get there. And I finally did all the things. I became a partner. And then I realized that I was working so much more, probably as much as when I was doing 80 hours a week, either at work, on call, meetings, scheduling, things that I had to do behind the scenes to be on these leadership roles that I had. And it was affecting my marriage. My husband and I ended up getting married in 2020 because since we weren't married, COVID happened. We couldn't see each other because neither of
Mm.
us could fly to the other country. So we ended up getting married just so that we could see each other. And we were probably going to get married eventually, but we just things didn't have to be that way, but COVID forced it. And so back to the reality was that my phone was going off all the time with messages and things about meetings. And I was taking my laptop to France with me when I would be off work so that I could get up at 1 or 2 in the morning to join a meeting via Zoom. So it was starting to affect our relationship as well. And it was actually last summer, we were planning our vacation. We were going to stay away from Paris because the Olympics were here. So we decided Paris would be crazy. So we went to Spain, south of Spain, and sitting on a rooftop of an Airbnb having a glass of wine, my phone went off with a text message from a locums company. And it was just like, ah. And I said, you know what? This is what I'm supposed to do. And I got in touch with them and asked, different questions that I had about specifics of work and looked at my husband and I said, "What do you think if I quit my job and do locums?" Of course, he was shocked. And he said, "I think that you should do what's going to make you happy." And I said, "Being with you more is going to make me happy." So I did it. And crazy enough, I made the decision in August of last year. I leased my car that I had and checked when the lease was up, December, because I was planning to make all of this move at the end of the year last year. So my lease was up in December. A friend of mine and his partner broke up, decided to rent my house. So I rented my house to somebody I knew and packed up all my stuff, sent it to France, packed up my cats. My husband came and helped me move. And I have not regretted the decision at all.
Well, it's wonderful. I'm so glad. At the same time, I'm sure there have been some negatives with the change. Have you noticed anything with doing your locums work or anything with being out of the regular, traditional workplace that has been hard to get used to?
The only thing that has been, I wouldn't even say this was negative. It was that you're not needed except for work. And that was a little bit of an adjustment because I had been needed to do things for so many different areas that I was involved with. And it was a little bit of an adjustment, but it's a happy adjustment because that was more time that I have for me. The negative thing about working locums, it would be some of the places that you go. Not every place is thrilled to have help. Some places are a little bit toxic. I found that out. Not with the first job, luckily, so I had a good comparison. But some places don't value you more than just somebody to fill a room to get cases done.
Mm, yeah, yeah. And it's interesting that you said the identity of not being needed in the same way because you had your hands in so many different things. You were running the board sometimes, you were doing vacation committee, you were on the clinical board and all sorts of things, and then all of that is gone, and your role is now just clinical. At the same time, what are the really good parts besides being able to be with your husband more, and having more time for yourself? What is the best part of this change?
The best part is my husband, but having time to travel, having time, if I just on a whim decide I want to visit a friend, I just go. Um, I I feel very free, and I noticed the thing with administrative roles at one of my locums jobs, and I love this locums job. I was sitting in the office and I heard some of the partners start to talk about working around some sort of vacation issue or something, and my ears perked up. And then I had to think, no, it doesn't involve you. It's not
Mm.
your problem. And just shut my ears off and go back to my work.
Yeah.
So it's a happy problem.
Right, right. Definitely, I've been in that same place where you start to hear of political upheaval and you're like, "Oh, it does not concern me. Not my business."
Yeah, not my problem. I'm going to escape myself out of the room.
Yeah. Being so established in the group that you were in, how was having that conversation? Like, did you have feelings around going and announcing your departure and this transition? And how was it received and all that? Because I know a lot of people, it holds them back because scared of what other people are going to say.
It's true. On one hand, you don't want to disappoint your colleagues, your peers. On the other hand, you're afraid. And I think the biggest fear people have with making these changes is security.
Mhm.
But we'll get back to that. To answer your question, though, I wasn't afraid of saying that I was leaving, and I anticipated the response that I got, and I was correct. It was not very positive. Um, not gonna lie. I think several people thought I was just throwing a tantrum of sorts because I was upset about something and that it would pass. But the moment I gave my notice and everything just started falling into place time wise, I knew it was the right decision. And a few people that knew me better than others knew I was serious about it. And the ones who were negative continued to be negative all the way till the time I left.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you just have to anticipate that.
Mhm.
And that's another realization that you have is that nobody cares. Very few people are going to care if you leave because somebody else is just going to fill your spot.
Yes.
And
I
that's
think
a sad
it's
reality.
right. It's not being negative or pessimistic to say that. The reality is that there is no true loyalty and you are replaceable. And I talk about that in my book. And, it's a negative thing to some people to say that, but it's actually kind of freeing in some ways. It's
Exactly.
like I can do what is right for me. And in the end, that is what matters more than what anybody else thinks.
Exactly. You have to take care of you. And disappointment, maybe some people might be disappointed, but in the end, you're the only one that has to answer to yourself. And if I'm not disappointed that I'm not a partner anymore or anything like that, then who cares? I'm happy. I'm still doing what I love as far as a career. I'm doing all the things that I love outside of work. So I if somebody's disappointed in me, that's their problem, not my problem anymore.
Speaking of that, talk a little bit about some of the other things that you like to do because besides travel and living in France, which is always a place that you wanted to explore, I know that you do some dancing. So, talk about some of the other things that are your interests.
Well, I got interested in ballroom dancing when I lived in Vegas. I'd never done dancing growing up. I didn't dance as a kid or anything like that. I got involved with salsa dancing in Houston and made friends outside of work that we would go dancing together. Then I tried to recreate that in Vegas, but salsa dancing was not as popular in Vegas as it was in Houston. So I was just taking lessons at a dance studio, and the owner walked by my instructor and me, and he said, "Oh, Kelly, are you gonna compete in the next competition?" And I said, "What competition?" He's like, "Oh, there's a competition in March." If in medicine, any of us that go into medicine, we're competitive by nature. So since didn't have anything to compete in medicine, I'm like, okay, yeah, what do I got to do? Sign me up. So I learned several different dance styles and competed and then got just kind of hooked on it. Enough so that I traveled to Serbia for a competition, to Milan for a competition. Uh, just a lot of fun, a lot of fun. Kind of an escape from the medicine world.
It's part of what I teach in my confidence course, which is to embrace a challenge that is purely for you can really boost your confidence in many different areas of your life. So, like taking on a competition in an area of dance that is new to you is just a perfect example of that. And then you've stuck with it and it's grown and you've taken on more challenges related to it. So, that's wonderful.
It's been fun. It's been a learning experience of its own because you can only control your own body. Can't control anything else. And even then, trying to think through all the different body parts that need to move at the same time and at the same rhythm as your partner, it's crazy.
Yeah. So, you had mentioned when we were talking about announcing your departure, you touched on the idea of people being held back by uncertainty in finances. So, can you tell us how you dealt with that aspect of this transition?
First thing I did was to be literal. I sat down with a piece of paper and pencil and calculated the things I need to pay every month. Calculated the things that I would need extra for every month. Calculated the things that I was not going to have to pay for every month anymore. I wouldn't have to pay for a car. I wouldn't need car insurance. My husband and I wouldn't be maintaining two households and all the utilities that go along with that. I would need money for travel. Although when you work for locums, they will pay for your travel, but they won't pay for international travel.
Oh, really? I didn't realize that, but yeah, there's a cap sometimes of, like, a certain amount of money or something.
Well, I was able to negotiate with them because with my husband's work, I'm able to more easily travel back and forth. But I did negotiate with the locums companies that they would have to pay my domestic flights because I can't travel just anywhere and everywhere. So they were agreeable to that. But I sat down with that, figured out what I needed every month. What would I have to live? And then, of course, give a little cushion on top of that because there's always expenses you don't anticipate. And once I figured that out and I started calculating how much I could make with locums and talking with a financial advisor, talking with my CPA, my financial advisor was actually the one who sealed the deal for me at the end. Because I called him, I know him very well. I've known him for 20 years. And I said, I'm thinking of quitting my job. I said, can I afford to quit my job? He said, are you going to work at all? And I said, well, yeah, I'm going to do locums. He said, give me a number. I said, cut my last year's salary in half. He said, I don't know what you're waiting for. I said, really? I can do that? He's like, yeah. He goes, how much money are you going to need to live? Your husband has a place. He's got the utilities covered at his place in France. So what do you need? Money for travel, maybe to help with food and, the things that I would need just for work. He said, I don't know what you're waiting for. So after I talked to him, I gave my notice.
I love the idea that you were very literal and realistic too, because people are scared of doing that and writing everything down. But it really helped you to see the whole picture. And then on top of that, you got a little bit of an extra boost of confidence from your financial
Exactly.
plan.
I needed that extra boost of confidence because numbers don't lie. Numbers never lie. But I always worry, am I forgetting something? Am I not thinking about something? And knowing that somebody outside could look at my numbers and say, yeah, you're fine. What would go do what you want. Be happy.
Yeah. So I know your life story in some detail and growing up in a really small town and fighting to get to this professional level that you have gotten to. And thought about it when I heard your story that you should be writing a book. And you said that you've thought about it, but you do write a blog. And tell us the name of the blog again.
The name of the blog is Finding French Charming. Instead of Prince
And
Charming, it's French Charming.
French Charming, yeah. And it has some really fun articles, and I love your writing style on there. And
Thank
I'm
you.
wondering, just thinking back to that little girl and all that you've gone through, if there's anything that you know now that you wish you knew just early on in your life.
Several things. I could think of several things I wish I knew early on. Um, don't get married young. Uh, hey, travel, do the things that you want to do before you're tied down. But I think as far as career, don't let what everybody else's definition of success is be your definition of success. And I think as we age, our motivations and the things that we're striving for probably change, and to be attuned to what changes in your life. And it's okay to not want the same thing that you wanted at 20 when you're 30, and not want the same thing when you're 40 that you did when you're 30. Things change in your life, and you have to just be okay with that.
Yes. What is your definition of success right now?
My definition of success is traveling, being with my husband, enjoying life to the fullest, which doesn't necessarily mean that you have to spend a lot of money, but, taking a walk in the middle of Paris on a sunny afternoon and buying a baguette. That's success.
I love that because it's simple, but it's also out there. It's not where you are from. It's not where you have lived before. And so it's both a simple item, but it's new to you and it's wonderful.
It's probably, I guess I could say, a childhood dream. I don't know where I learned about France, but I remember as a little girl saying, I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to live in a big city. I'm going to live in a high rise. I'm going to drive a convertible and I'm going to go to France. I hadn't even traveled in an airplane when I was that age, ever, and I was always fascinated with it, so I became a doctor. I did live in some big cities. I did live in a high-rise a few times. I had a convertible for a short time and realized that it's not that practical.
Messes your hair all up.
Gosh, it rocks from the semi trucks. You have to, like, beware of those, and then you
Yeah.
can't hear if somebody calls you. So if you're on call, you can't drive with the top down because you can't hear. So, yeah, not very practical. And then I traveled to France. My first trip to France was actually when I graduated medical school.
That's a really good example too, though, of the idea of success changing as you age and as you learn and you gain wisdom. So I
Mhm.
love Kelly, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. And remind people where they can find you if there's any particular place you are on social media. And then your blog is findingfrenchcharming.com.
Correct. I'm on Instagram. It's KCatch22. So KKATCH 22. And on Facebook, I think it's just Kelly Katcher. I'm on LinkedIn, also KCatch22.
Okay, great. Thanks so much for being on the show again.
Thank you, Dawn.